I keep getting better and better every week with my DFS picks. Had somewhat of a rocky start in the beginning due to injuries and inconsistencies, unpredictability, and also my fault. But last couple weeks have been doing pretty good. Let's try to keep it going for week 5. What's going on, fantasy football fans? I'm your host, Hussein the Brain, and you're watching The Couch. These are my NFL DFS picks for week 5. This week, we're going to be living in that mid to upper price range. Not too many great punts. Some really good value picks, but not too many minimum price players that are great, especially at running back and quarterback. And we're going to start it off with my 5 quarterbacks that I do like, and that's Deshaun Watson going up against the Falcons. The only problem with this is that it's going to be a bit chalky because everyone knows the Falcons are a horrible defense, and what we just saw week 4, it was just so obvious. I picked Mariota actually in a couple of my GPP lineups. They worked pretty well, and we saw that they can even let a guy like Mariota look really good. AJ Brown and Corey Davis both went off. So it's going to be an obvious pick. He can score on the ground. He can throw the ball to one of his several receivers. Can even throw the ball to Duke Johnson. So many ways for Deshaun Watson to score. And we almost know for certain the Texans will put up a good amount of points, a good amount of yards, and move the ball well against the Falcons' D. Now, someone with a much higher floor who I'm very confident in is going to be Tom Brady. And I'm actually more excited about Tom Brady. Even though we're only saving $200, I like him a lot more. And this way, you can pair him up. You can stack him with players that aren't going to be as highly owned, like a Josh Gordon or Philip Dorsett. Because Edelman, if he's healthy, he's going to ball out. And he's going to be owned in a lot of lineups. But Dorsett and Josh Gordon, I don't think so. I think they'll be owned in much less lineups. And then we have Kyler Murray, who I think has a realistic shot to finish as a top 3 quarterback. Maybe even number 1 if we're talking about the main slate. The floor is awful, and that's what we like in GPPs. What's the ownership going to be? Not good. It's actually going to be more chalky. He'll probably be a top 5, top 7 owned quarterback. I'm guessing right around that range. If I were to guess, I'd say about a top 5 as far as ownership goes. So it's not going to be a contrarian pick by any means. It's not a cheap quarterback, but one that can score in so many ways, going up against the Bengals. Horrible defense. And guess what? The Cardinals also have a horrible defense as well. So we have a shootout in the making. I also did want to mention, and I actually wrote this under my David Johnson notes, but I'll mention this right now since we're talking about both defenses being terrible. The fastest paced offense in the league is the Cardinals. They are number 1 when it comes to running plays per second, and number 7 is the Bengals. So this has the making for the floor is low for everything. Like, don't get me wrong. It's the Bengals versus the Cardinals. Like, bad things can happen. I get that. But this does have the making for a super shootout. Both teams just moving the ball up the field, up-tempo offenses, going against each other. Andy Dalton throwing the ball all over the place. Kyler Murray racking up a bunch of rushing stats on top of all the great passing stats he's going to have. But hey, this could all be a dream. May not happen at all. I just want to tell you that as well. This is a great game to target. This is also a game that can severely disappoint. But that's what we like in GPPs. We need to attack games like this one. And then this one, I'm kind of torn. Jameis Winston going up against the Saints. Look, the Saints defense is okay. So people ask me, what's up with the Cowboys last week? Do the Cowboys suck, or is the Saints defense really that good? And I said, it's right in between. I think the Saints defense is average. I know they allow a ton of points to quarterbacks, but that's just looking at, 4 weeks of data and fantasy points. Like, it doesn't tell the whole story. They're good sometimes, probably better at home, so the Saints are at home. But then you have Jameis Winston, who I think's finally starting to become the draft pick the Buccaneers intended when they drafted Jameis Winston. It's taken this man about 5 years, but and he's been playing really well. Let's see what he can do. He has a couple receivers in Godwin and Evans. They're both elite. They're both doing their things. I think Godwin's success is more due to Bruce Arians and that offense just working well, putting Godwin in situations to succeed. But still, he's still a really good receiver, and he's doing it. Like, what matters is results, and he's giving the team, the Buccaneers, results, and he's giving fantasy owners results. Chris Godwin, that is. And I do like Matt Ryan. Now, the ownership on him, I'm not sure how it's going to be. It could be all over the place. This one's a volatile ownership. I can't project the ownership for this one because on one hand, everyone knows he's going to throw the ball a lot. He's probably going to get his pass yards. But on the other hand, he can really screw up against this extreme Texans defense who's opportunistic, who can wreak havoc, but they're not necessarily sound, and they don't necessarily have a great pass defense and are just a reliable defense. So Matt Ryan, 315 pass yards. Yup, I see that happening for sure. Touchdowns 0 to 5. I don't know how many touchdowns he's going to throw. This is the type of quarterback I like in GPPs. And then we have, this is my kind of throwaway quarterback. Not too, I don't think we're going to be finding a lot of good contrarian quarterbacks this week. None that I'm going for. I got some people written down in my notes, but I don't know if I'm going to, like Rodgers, Dak, Daniel Jones, I'm probably not going to pick. Kirk Cousins, I don't know if I'll go on him. Chase Daniel. And then we have Andy Dalton, who I would pick a lot, but he's going to be chalk because this is what people do. They try to be contrarian, and so a lot of people are going to be talking about Andy Dalton, right? The price isn't that great. He's got a great matchup, and people will pick him. That's just what I think. So even though I do kind of like him, he is super risky. The floor is way low, especially with John Ross now hurt. John Ross out. We know AJ Green is out. But easy stack here. You can stack him with Autumn Tate. You can stack him with Boyd. You can even stack him with iFart. And yeah. And for running backs, there's obvious choices like C-Mac and Zeke. But let's talk about less obvious choices, and those guys are kind of expensive, and that's David Johnson, who, just like Kyler Murray, who I think can finish as a top 3, top 5 quarterback this week. That's a bit riskier. I'm much more confident in David Johnson. I do have him as a top 2 running back. He's going to do it more ways than one. I see him scoring a rushing touchdown. I see him scoring a receiving touchdown. And last week I was saying, man, I had a good feeling he has a good shot at breaking that 100-yard and getting us those 3 fantasy points, those bonus points for DK. And boom, what does this guy do? Gets 99 receiving yards. So he definitely has that potential. Hasn't done it in a couple years, I don't think, or at least last year, if he did it, we didn't notice because he was so bad. Last year, he was a bust. Man, this game, he's going to get a ton of targets. Look at that, 11 targets week 4, 9 targets week 3. And with all these injuries to the Cardinals, we don't expect Christian Kirk to play. He is questionable, so he's not ruled out yet. I'm not expecting him to play. I don't see why they rush him back from that ankle injury, but we'll see. With Christian Kirk, questionable. Bird, he's out. They're just so banged up at the wide receiver position. The coach doesn't want to play Andy Isabella, so he's got him as like the 5th wide receiver. So essentially, David Johnson should be the number 2 or number 3 wide receiver. Again, priced at $7,500 going against the Bengals, if that wasn't obvious. Next up, just 2 guys I wanted to talk about. Melvin Gordon versus Eckler. I see Eckler getting maybe 60% of the touches and snaps, and Melvin Gordon getting maybe 40%. They're going to ease in Melvin Gordon. Both are very expensive, so the only reason I would pick one was to kind of separate myself. I do see Eckler having a really good game, though, and the price isn't crazy expensive. Melvin Gordon's a guy that I would not play. I think the only reason you play him is if you expect him to be the goal line back, which could happen, and he could punch in 2 touchdowns. So that's very doable. just the price isn't really there for me. I don't really like it. Melvin Gordon kind of has a big name. So just some I did want to talk about. I feel like a lot of people do have questions about the Chargers backfield situation. And then we have a Mixon who is okay. Another guy with a low floor, but I do like him priced at $6,100. I will have him in some of my lineups. And this is probably the one. Well, actually, I love two running backs. So I really like David Johnson. Mixon I like. And these two I really, really, really like. And that's Aaron Jones, top 10 running back this week, period. Main slate, DFS, season long, any site, whatever you're on. Aaron Jones, I see him finally getting the yards. So that's really his knock. Like, he's been used a good amount. He's getting the touchdown. So what is this? He got a rushing touchdown. He got, no receiving touchdowns, but he's got 4 rushing touchdowns in 4 weeks. He's been putting up really good fantasy points, except the first week against the best defense, the Bears. And no Jamal Williams this week. I'm all in. And if you're wondering, is he going to be chalky? Not that chalky because of just people's concerns with him, because he put up 21 rushing yards last week against the Eagles, because he put 19 rushing yards up against the Broncos. I think he's going to put up way more rushing yards this week against the Cowboys. Cowboys defense is good, not great. Aaron Jones should be used more in the pass game. They should give him the ball more. He's obviously the goal line back, no Jamal Williams. And the price is absolutely amazing at $5,900. That's great value. Now, as far as chalk for my next pick, this is going to be chalk. But I'm such a huge fan of David Montgomery. And guess what, guys? This is Mike Davis's snap count. Let me make this big right here. This is Mike Davis's snap count. Is going down, 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 down. And finally, last week, Mike Davis got 0 snaps. So Montgomery has made Mike Davis irrelevant. Tariq Cohen still relevant in this offense with Taylor Gabriel out. Coach not fully trusting Anthony Miller, or just not really using any other wide receivers other than Allen Robinson and Gabriel, who's out, going to miss his second game. So Cohen is a good receiver, and he is used as a receiver, and Nagy can put both Cohen and Montgomery out there at the same time. Can we please get some targets for Montgomery? So I like this. 1 target week 1, then it goes to 3, then 5. So he's being used a little bit more in the passing game. He can catch, and sure as heck is being used in the run game a lot. 6 rush attempts week 1, then 18, then 13, and then 21 rush attempts against the Vikings. These are very promising stats right here. 21 rush attempts against the Vikes, 5 targets. Okay, so he didn't put up a ton of fantasy points, which is why I do like him. He is projected to have a lot of ownership, but I don't know. Maybe people get scared and get froggish and don't pick Montgomery. I'm picking him. I don't care. Chalk, no chalk. Whatever, going against the Raiders. This defense will crush the Raiders, and they're in London, so it says they're playing in Oakland. You know, it's a home game for Oakland, but as a matter of fact, they're in London, so it's far from being a home game for the Oakland Raiders. Defense will crush them. A lot of goal line opportunities for Montgomery. Nagy will feed him the ball. I see Montgomery get in 29 touches, something like that, 27 to 30 touches, and absolutely beasting. This is going to be a breakout game for David Montgomery. Last week, I didn't spend too much on wide receivers as far as studs go. I did have some in my lineup, don't get me wrong, and they all burnt us. Julio Jones, Hopkins, and of course, Keenan Allen. What happened? He had like a 70-yard touchdown that got called back. Oh my God. And so this week, people might be a little bit froggish to go get one of these stud wide receivers again. I'm not. I got Hopkins ranked as my number 1 wide receiver. I have a lot of confidence in him, as much confidence as we can have in a wide receiver. A little bit volatile of a position, but Hopkins, number 1, he's the highest price, but rightfully so, going against the Falcons. Kenny Stills is also questionable. Like that even really makes a difference, but thought that was something I needed to say. And then we have Julio Jones. No, I didn't want to even talk about Julio Jones. Then we have Keenan Allen, priced at $7,300. I actually believe this price is kind of low. Like, he's been absolutely beasting this year. So he just had one bad game against the Dolphins. That's got to be an anomaly. Look, it's against the Dolphins. And what would that play have been worth with DK, with the points he would have got for the 100-yard? That would have been 3 plus 6 plus 7. Man, that would have been over 16 points possibly for that one play that got called back, which would have made him a stud. So yeah, 10 plus 16. Yeah, he would have had like 26 fantasy points. He should have a bounce back game. And no, I'm not scared of Chris Harris and the Broncos defense. They've not been doing that. Like, I'm not scared of them. Keenan Allen will still get his targets. He's unguardable. They're going to have to double. I don't think they'll double team him, but they're going to have to double, triple team him. Easier said than done, especially with a guy like Keenan Allen, who's not necessarily a deep threat speed wide receiver. And I've been looking on PFF, and Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs have the top two biggest advantages when it comes to their wide receiver cornerback matchup. So this screams GPP. I gotta have at least one of these wide receivers in at least one of my GPP lineups. I don't know yet if I'll go on the Kirk Cousins hype. I don't think I'll put Kirk Cousins in any of my lineups, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to put at least Thielen and or Diggs in a lineup. And if I have both, I might as well go all in and go with Cousins. But the matchup is so sweet. These guys will actually get open. I don't know what's going on with the Vikings. There are some rumors going around and whatnot that Kirk Cousins apologized to Thielen and that Diggs may have got a little upset because he didn't, he's called Adam Thielen one of the best in the league. And now Diggs gets mad, like Thielen gets mad, and then Kirk apologizes to Thielen. And because of that, Diggs gets more mad. So I don't know what's going on there, but come on, guys. This is a great game. This is a W. Well, I mean, Diggs has to play, and you guys got to play hard. You guys can get a W here. This guy's due for a bounce-back game. Hollywood Brown, priced at $5,700. Not expensive, nor cheap. Going against the Steelers, man, he's been getting a decent amount of targets, and for his big play ability, I think he can do it. All he has to do is get one big play, like a Deshaun Jackson or Scary Terry, and yeah, he can definitely do it. And a guy you definitely don't want in cash games. I'm definitely going to have him in at least one of my GPP lineups. We also have MVS and Geronimo with Devontae Adams out. That's pretty much a no-brainer. Anyone can come up with that conclusion. No Adams, so Jimmy Graham, MVS, and also Geronimo will be getting more targets, and Geronimo is priced at $5,000. MVS is priced at $5,600. Next, we have Calvin Ridley. This has got to be chalk, right? We're looking at it. Look, Calvin Ridley averaging a decent amount of fantasy points, going against an amazing matchup in the Texans, allowing a ton of points to the wide receiver position. And first two games, beasted, did amazing. And last two games, did horrible. 1 fantasy point, 6 fantasy points. Due for a bounce back? Possibly. We know Matt Ryan's going to be airing out the ball. And I kind of do like this, actually, because we've seen Hooper and Sanu really step up. And so defenses can't really just zero in on stopping Julio or Calvin Ridley. They have to defend Hooper and Sanu as well, and also Freeman in the pass game. And so Calvin Ridley could have a bounce back game. Let's see. I don't like this one target against the Colts here, but he did get 6 targets last week. Let's get that to 9. At least 9 targets for him. Come on, Matty Ice. Who else we got? Sutton at $4,900. Not too bad. Ooh, I do have some cheap plays. So we do need to mix in 1 or 2 cheap players to make our lineups work this week. If we're going with that medium to higher priced players right around that range. And here's some good punts at wide receiver, or at least some cheap plays, and that's Auden Tate at $3,500. This is my favorite cheap play. Let me see if I can find him. There we go. He's actually been getting a lot of targets. He's been okay. So we have an okay wide receiver, underpriced, and then we have an injury to John Ross, so he'll be getting more targets. On top of that, we have the sweet matchup. Auden Tate, $3,500. This kind of reminds me of Aguilar a couple weeks ago when he was priced right around here. I think he was priced at $3,200. Like, he's going to return value, right? Like, he's going to get over 5-6 targets. He'll easily return value. That's my favorite cheap play at wide receiver. But I did want to go over some other ones just to keep you guys posted. Kiki QT could be a sneaky play if Kenny Stills is out. Now, Kenny Stills is questionable and will be a game time decision. I believe he has a knee and ankle injury, something like that. My guess is Stills won't play, but I don't know. He's questionable. And then we have Alex Erickson at $3,100. So this is going to be super cheap, super contrarian. It's just that he's just really not that good. It's really just a dart. This is kind of a dumb pick. He won't get he's not like that great. But then, if you do want to separate your lineups, you got a guy like Erickson. If he gets in the end zone, blown coverage, Patrick Peterson's still suspended, hey, that's going to rise you to the top of GPPs. And I did make a dumb, bold, crazy, contrarian pick last week that panned out with Marcus Mariota. And another one, gosh, this just keeps targeting this game. I'm not even going to be able to find this guy. Trent Sherfield, who was pretty good in the preseason, if I remember correct. Like, if it's the right guy I'm thinking of. He did okay in the preseason and hasn't really done anything, but he's going to be maybe the number 4 wide receiver for the Cardinals, maybe number 3 wide receiver. Let's see what happens with Christian Kirk's status. And he should get a lot of targets. I think they'll try to focus on stopping Larry Fitzgerald. Easier said than done. And let's see if Sherfield can handle whichever cornerback decides to try to cover him. Good matchup. I'm not too confident in him. This is a pure punt play. Like, I have more confidence in a guy like Auden Tate. Auden Tate is $500 more. Oh, I think I did not talk about Keyshawn Johnson. So a little bit more trustworthy than Sherfield, and Keyshawn Johnson's priced at $3,500. I do like Auden Tate more, just to be clear, at the same price point, $3,500. You guys are ready for this crapshoot right here at tight end? I like Kelsey and Kittle as my top 2 tight ends this week, but they're not on the main slate, unfortunately. And Ertz is supposed to go off, but I don't really trust him. Evan Ingram, I do trust. And we have a lot of people these intermediate players, the players that know what's going on, but they're not necessarily like super experts. They're going to be going for Darren Waller. They're going to think he's a good GPP play. They're going to think, oh, he's priced heavily. He had a bad game, and now he's not going to be owned a lot. I'm not picking Darren Waller in too many lineups. And this is because I'd rather go with Ingram or Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews is going to do great against the Steelers. And then we have Evan Ingram, who's only, $800 more. He's basically a wide receiver with a tight end designation. I'd rather go with one of those guys because tight ends get a lot of targets against the Bears and actually have had some pretty good success. But if Terrell Williams is far from 100%, he's questionable, or he doesn't play, I mean, the Bears, all they have to do is stop Waller and they win the game. So they're going to probably naturally stop Josh Jacobs, who's not that talented. And then all they got to do is stop Waller. You do that, that's the keys to victory. He's the 3rd most expensive tight end. No thank you, Mr. Waller. And there's some cheaper guys. I'd rather go, look at this, Greg Olsen, who's been very good this year. He's had 2 games that weren't that great and has 2 beastly games with over 20 or more fantasy points. And he's going up against the Jaguars. They're not going to be able to cover him. Greg Olsen is a type of receiver, a type of target that the quarterback trusts. And I'm saying the quarterback because he's played with two quarterbacks in 2 games. So whether it's Cam Newton or whether it's Kyle Allen, he'll be just fine. The quarterback will throw to him. All he has to do is get open. Some easy touchdown opportunities as well against the Jags. So we talked about Waller, right? Waller's the sexy tight end. He was on Hard Knocks. He's just look at the guy. Like, wow, everyone's rooting for him. He's got that big name this year. Sort of a fantasy darling, right? Now at $1,100 cheaper, we have the old, boring Delaney Walker. Now, he only had 1.4 fantasy points, and I'm telling you, I would have won big because I paired up Mariota with Walker in a couple lineups. And so at least I had Corey Davis in one of them that cashed in pretty nice. But I was like, man, Walker's going to go off against the Falcons. But they didn't need to because those wide receivers were open down the field. Now, this game right here, Walker is somewhat matchup proof. I mean, tight end, the matchup doesn't matter too much for tight ends. Like, not as much as it does for, like, a running back or something like that. Like, if I'm starting Ezekiel Elliott, I'm much more confident starting him against the worst rushing defense versus the best rushing defense. With a guy like Delaney Walker, the tight end defense doesn't really matter that much. There's so much going on with defending the tight end. There's so many different variables. And at the end of the day, it's hard to predict. That's just the truth. So Delaney Walker, look, 1.4 fantasy points last week, okay? Going up against, what does this say? The first, so they're the best defense when it comes to stopping the tight end, the Bills. He's going to be contrarian, and that's why I like him. All right, he's a good tight end. I'm sure he can do it against good defenses. He can put up stinkers against bad defenses. All I'm saying is it can happen. The price is right. He will be contrarian. This number one right here, first against the tight end. They're the toughest team against the tight end in fantasy. That's going to deter a lot of players away. Him having a terrible week in week 4 is going to deter a lot of people from picking him in lineups. Love Walker this week, but like I said, it's for the contrarian pick. And then at 3,300, not so contrarian, as we see at number 32 right next to his name, is Tyler Eifert, going up against a defense that allows the most fantasy points to tight ends. The Cardinals, the price is right. The targets are there. What is he getting? Like 5 targets a game. He'll get, again, 5, 6, 7 targets and should hopefully get in the end zone. He has to get in the end zone for it to work out for us, and maybe he can. Just maybe. Oh man, I have a punt for you guys. Oh boy. And I actually think this might work out because this is one of the scariest games, and I'm not going to be able to find him because he's minimum priced. With Jordan Reed out and Vernon Davis out, Jeremy Sprinkle at 2,500 is almost certain to return value. Now, I have seen this guy play. He's not that good. But we do know that Washington will need to throw the ball. And if Scary Terry's not playing or the receivers aren't really doing much, they'll need to use Jeremy Sprinkle as a receiver. Look, it's not been that great. 4 targets week 3, 3 targets week 4. He's only had like 3 fantasy points a game. But hey, if you want to punt and you really need it to work, like I might rather go spend up on a defense than get like a $3,000 tight end. You know, if I had to spend $500 more, I'd probably spend it on the defense instead of spending $500 more on the tight end. Because for the next best tight end that I have is, so I got Fant around 2,800. So you might want to go with Fant. That's okay. But really, Eifert is the one that I trust the most, and that's at 3,300. So that's 800 more. Just throwing that out there. It's just a punt. Why do I have to give a disclaimer? You guys know the deal. Look at him. He's a third string tight end, minimum priced on a bad team. You get the deal, but he is a punt. And we do need to identify those cheap plays to make some of the lineups work. For defenses, I'm really only trusting 3 defenses. Well, really 2. So let's talk about the Eagles. Third most expensive defense, 3,700 with Sam Darnold out. I love him, man. They got huge upside. The floor, not so good. Okay, so if you want a risky defense, no floor, that's the Eagles right there. I would not pick them in cash. For cash, I would definitely go with the Patriots. If you can't afford them, the Bears will do just fine. Going against the Raiders, this will be a low-scoring game. If Terrell Williams is out, the Raiders are, man, it's going to be bad. Like, you can't even watch this game if Terrell Williams is out because the Bears are absolutely going to demolish him. The Raiders will be even more one-dimensional. If Williams is out, and man, that guy's questionable, let's see if he plays. Patriots have a great ceiling and the highest floor. This is going to be a disaster game for Washington no matter how you chalk it up. There's just so much going on with Washington. Gruden could get fired. Scary Terry is a 50-50 chance of playing. What's up with the quarterback? What's up with the running back? What's up with the tight end? What's up with Trent Williams? I mean, man, so on. So what's up with the defense? Like, guys, it's looking so bad for Washington. I just don't see him doing anything this game on any facet. Special teams, defense, or offense. And Patriots, they're priced at $4,300. It's totally okay. So if I can't afford the Patriots, I'm going to go with the Bears. I love both of them. I did want to throw some other options, but those are my three defenses that I'm willing to spend up for those three, for sure. We have the Bills D at $3,100. I don't think it matters. I always say football is a team game, and quarterback affects the defense. I don't think if Josh Allen is out, it's going to affect the defense at all. I think it's right going to be the same. So $3,100 going against the Titans, slated to be a low scoring game, and because it's a low scoring game, I also have the Titans at $3,000. Of course, going against the Bills. And what do we have? Chargers, if you're looking for a super cheap defense, $2,700, or I should say a great value defense. This is another defense that has a decent ceiling, but not a good floor at all. And defenses don't really have a good floor in general, but when we talk about the Patriots and Bears against good matchups, that's a pretty high floor considering the position. And for super cheaps, we have a Buccaneers going against the Teddy Bridgewaters. And we have the Steelers. I don't quite get why they're priced so cheap, going against the Ravens. Look, Ravens' offense has been great. I don't think the Steelers are going to stop them. But at this price, I just don't get that. There's so many I'd rather have the Steelers over the Jets D, the Falcons D, maybe even the Bengals D. There's a over the Raiders D possibly too. There's at least 5 defenses that I would rather have the Steelers over. Yet they're priced, let's just say minimum price, the cheapest one, because no one's picking these guys. I mean, they had to DraftKings had to change the pricing on this, man. $1,800 for Washington. Don't pick that, man. They're gonna get you negative points. Don't do it. Make sure you guys are subscribed to this YouTube channel. Just hit that couch icon over here. We also have a second YouTube channel. It's called Fantasy Couch Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that one as well. Hit this video with a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thumbs down if you did not. And I'll catch you on the next video /live stream.